every once in a while on Thursdays if I have a thing to do.
Oh, okay.
Or if I gotta do something with my research assistants or something. It just depends on the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, I only come, but when I started teaching at CSU 6 years ago, I used to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but I was like, it's too much. Right. So, huh? Good, good.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know
Hi,
why.
Maggie.
It's like, it's got you, there we go. It's like, it's got you.
This
on
is so
screen.
cool. I'm so glad to physically be here.
Oh, you're at home and you're beautiful.
Oh,
This is better than my computer in my office for internet. So I maybe I'll get to attend one in person too. Looking forward.
Hey, how you been?
Good, good. How about you?
It's very, very excited for today.
So can she see
Learning
us?
good stuff about alternative
Probably
breeding
not.
practices.
I think so.
So, Nikki, can you see us?
I can't, you can see me on the big screen, right?
Thinking, but you can't see us yet, right?
But I can hear you and it identifies who's speaking. I think so far. I mean, I saw Karen's name.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm the host.
Because she's the host.
Yeah.
I don't think my name popped up, Rufina.
Oh, I guess maybe it's just. started.
No.
I think
It
it's
has-
only Karen because she's hosting.
Perfect. That
I
makes sense.
thought maybe you could see my big head, but maybe.
Maybe with the lights on?
No, I think you have to, I think it has something to do with the camera.
Exactly. I'm really
Yeah.
like, where is that camera?
And,
The camera is shooting here.
yeah,
out to
she,
the
yeah,
Class, so.
All right.
Presenters.
exactly.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't have the webcam on a stick.
We have this.
Has a document scanner.
This doesn't work as a.
Do you know about this technology? Go check it out and make us look
Yeah,
good.
that
Push a fancy button to make us look good.
So I can see some figures there,
Oh,
but you're there waving at me, but you're little.
Oh my God, it's moving.
I know,
That's
awesome.
That's good.
This room is so fancy.
oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, just know that. We're just kind of different.
Cool. What are we doing over here? Because I think it's the main speaker.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, keep talking to us.
Yeah, so I can see you at the desk, but you're small and I'm still on the screen.
Yeah, you're really on the screen. Hey, you're on the screen. I'm gonna see if I can get to teach in this room next semester.
Nice.
I like this room. I've never been down on this end in the building.
Kind of like a little hidden
I
gem.
teach upstairs, so usually when I come in the building, I go straight upstairs. I didn't even know all this was down here.
It's all new to me, so.
Is it? Yeah.
I'm new.
And you are?
I'm Jennifer.
Jennifer. I was
Hi.
gonna say, I am so sorry.
Please don't apologize.
Oh,
How are you?
Well, how about
Good.
yourself?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Good. Yeah.
I'm so glad you could make it.
Yeah. Busy day, but good.
Right?
All good stuff.
Made the hair pulling stop for the day.
Do you live here in Pueblo, Jennifer?
I do.
Yeah, I'm Rufina.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
We'll see you the next time.
What do you teach, Rufina?
I teach the speech communication classes and writing and rhetoric.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I live in Colorado Springs.
As I have found, it's fairly common. Lots of folks.
Yeah,
that teach your-
and I'm usually on Zoom. This is my first, but because I'm here all day on Thursday from 8 to 3:30. So like I was saying, to help, I'll just stick around.
I think so, but we didn't talk about it.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So there
for
was some stuff I wanted to.
Rachel, where's Rachel?
Oh,
She's probably,
hooray. No, they still got my head there.
oh, you're like, we're seeing your hair. Well, you look good, so don't worry about it.
That's a beautiful cabin too.
Oh.
That she built herself.
Yeah.
I can see kind of the ceiling thing. I'm seeing something look very cabinish rustic. Oh, there's Rachel.
Yeah, there's Rachel. She'll know what to do. Yeah, that's our traditional Viga and rough cut lumber roof or ceiling. Hi, Rachel.
Is this sound level okay?
Hello.
Rachel, can you see me, Rachel?
I can see your hands.
The camera's behind you now.
Oh. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
I'm in the room. I'm not on Zoom for the first time.
Ah,
I
yes.
miss you because you're my Zoom buddy.
So the reason.
But I teach all day on Thursday, so I just decided to stay.
This side and have it all at once. Oh, except you're trying to share the join code and I have it on the wrong screen.
Well, Vicky, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, me too. I said my Wi-Fi at home is better than in my office. And but so I'll make it to one of them that's in person. That's kind of fun that they're doing that. But we were just seeing my head. I can't tell if it's still there. Yeah, it is. See on the screen in there? How do they get them at the podium? How do they get them to be big?
This is the best we're getting for that.
Oh,
There's no camera in the front here, so this is as good as it gets for seeing my face.
Unless you want to try.
Yeah, I know that might be weird, but we'll see what happens.
Cool.
It might be like hybrid.
there we go.
Oh, now something's happening. Lovely, except you're upside down.
Yeah, I've taught in that classroom and it's an adventure.
Oh, now you're getting right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks good.
Yeah.
Hey. How are you? That's not bad. How about that? Do you prefer that?
Have some water.
Yeah.
Get hydrated, Ron. When the hydrated part. I'm teasing, I have.
You having a little bit of a. You have an ear pod.
Yeah, so we're gonna
Oh,
have
well,
to move the
we'll
camera
do that.
anyways.
Juan, how are you? I miss you. I'm good.
All right.
Yes, very good.
Sorry, I'm just muting.
I tried to sit over here.
Oh, please.
Huh?
I don't have it, I'm just like used to sitting far away.
Oh, that's all right.
That's still an IT.
Rachel, you're gonna share the screen and do a near pod, is that accurate?
Well, it usually works better if the podium logs into Nearpod themselves.
I was just thinking, because you mentioned the co-host thing, and I was thinking about that right now.
Right, and that's what I wanna make sure that there's co-hosting privileges. I know I put Denise on there, but I don't know if it's open to anyone, so we'll check on that.
So the Nearpod code is CXL.
I got it. I am a student. From what?
Okay, Carla, I'm going to make you a co-teacher. There we go. You are now a co-teacher.
Okay, so I'm actually gonna wanna move everybody's pieces eventually, so that everyone here.
I did hear you, and I would have stopped to say
Do it that
Love
way.
near pod.
Well,
Yeah, we won't be able
instead
to,
of sharing the screen.
I'll be able to
share.
see your faces, but nobody else.
Okay. Let me,
For-
Or we
That's
share,
okay.
or we do this. Do that.
We have a whiteboard. We have. You have a whiteboard, my
Anybody have dry erase markers home then?
Oh, I used
Yes.
to in the olden days.
I know, I mean, rooms with chalkboards now.
I'm
so
so proud of them.
Wow.
Oh, that life science room over there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but, and in the math building. So. It's all chalk. Everything is covered in a layer of chalk.
All right.
Oh, it's all, I remember that very well. There's our code. I love it. Doing well. See, and it's above in the blue thing too.
Yeah, I just
only
figured
do
I'd
the
make it
one.
really big.
But it's a really
Great
class this past
See, they're so involved.
Yeah.
And they're so into it.
I think they're like so desperate for connection.
Every week, I never finish my slides.
Yeah.
Every week I have to roll them over. It's like, all right. Eventually we'll catch up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's.
Exactly.
There's so involved.
Yeah.
So much fun.
So they're learning tons.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're right.
Should we
And it's a big
start telling people to log in?
Yeah, I'm just, yeah.
Yes.
Online folks, if you would like, they're gonna use a Nearpod presentation, and so you can go to nearpod.com, nearpod.com, and then put in the code. You'll see it in the chat.
And everybody here, you can also log into Nearpod. It's join.nearpod.com. And this code here. Or you just go to nearpod.com and log in like a student. That also works. I am. Go to like a browser. Like a Safari.
All right, so happy to announce our second Faculty Academy of the fall. We have the dynamic Zimmerman duo with us today. We have Carla Zimmerman in person, and we have Rachel Zimmerman on the internet with us. There she is. And they're going to talk to us today about alternative grading practices. I'm so excited. So without further ado, the Zimmermans.
Rachel, do you want to introduce your
So I don't know how many people are there with you, but we have 13 people in the Nearpod. Does that seem about right?
There are 18-ish in here.
Yeah.
Mine came up in German. I'm having problems. I love it. And I'm not fluent.
Are you entering the code right now?
No, I just went to neopod.com and
Nearpod, sorry, that's my fault. Nearpod.
that's
Yeah,
what
it's,
I- See, and
Oh,
Did you send her?
my glasses don't reach that far. I'm sorry, I have a problem already.
I'll vouch for her. She said,
What's this Neopod thing?
It's
Or
near, yeah, it's
Nearpod?
Nearpod.
What is it?
Rachel, do you want to, or either of you want to start with a brief description of what Nearpod is?
Nearpod is kind of like an interactive presentation software. You can use it synchronously like this. You can use it asynchronously. And it's got a lot of cool features. This is just one of them. And yeah. There's more to it.
You can put videos in it, you can put slides in it, you can put
Oh, you can put websites in it. That's pretty cool.
like this, collaboration pages so they can communicate, post their notes together.
Mhm.
It helps you also to make your class more interactive. I've used it.
That was
Denise
one of the
helped me
first
out
classes
with
we
it.
ever did was your
Yeah.
class,
It
yeah.
makes it more interactive. You can communicate with your students. You can see their thoughts. Maybe some of them kind of shy to talk in a class, so that's their way to communicate.
All right, how do we check how many people are in here?
The little symbol at the bottom with the 20 next to it.
You know what I mean?
I think those are just lights.
Yeah,
Ones at the bottom.
maybe it doesn't show up. on my video.
Okay, yeah, it's possible that you can't see it. It's 21 people now.
Yeah, I just got in, so.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Any services?
Can't count.
Making good gifts, videos, and good verbal response. It has tons of accessibility features, which is nice.
I use Nearpod in all of my teaching for all of my classes. Students love it.
And we have licenses, if anybody's interested, that you
Oh.
can get through the CTA.
I was just gonna ask you,
Yeah,
would we
and
need
set
to?
up and train. Yeah,
Okay, great.
this would be good for your asynchronous day.
Right, yes, yes.
All right, in-person people, anyone still trying to get in? All right. Sam, how are we doing there?
I think we've got probably everybody, 24 now.
All right, so let's start this off first with some good things. But now that we've sort of touched on, the nice things in our life, let's talk a little bit about grading. And we'd like to start off with this question. When it comes to grading, what is it that you dislike about grading? If you're logged into the Nearpod, you should be able to add a comment in there, just like you did on the previous one. I love the ability to do like gifts here.
And if you like a response, you can click the little heart next to it. You can also reply.
It's like Facebook.
Mhm.
So we have a couple themes that seem to be developing here. Time and the amount of time that it takes to grade, definitely a big one. So other things kind of going back to what we talked about last month. So grading can be kind of judgmental and cold. It can stress students out. It can punish students for things outside of their control. And that is definitely a good point. Let's see, any other big themes? Time for us, anxiety for students. And then another one I kind of see here is like, what does the grade do? So do students use the grade and associated feedback? Do they look at the feedback? Do they just look at their score and ignore it? Is it actually telling us what students learned?
And there's a lot of research since the 80s showing that if students get a grade and feedback, they'll only look at the grade, not the feedback. So a lot of you are picking up on that.
Let's see. Anyone else trying to get an answer?
Will we be graded on the answer?
So this kind of brings us to another question. What is the purpose of grading? If grading is painful for everybody involved, why are we doing it? What are we hoping to accomplish with grading?
Okay, so it looks like a lot of people are doing them because we have to.
On top of that, we have a couple of themes. So we need to measure student learning. Are students achieving the learning outcomes for the course? Do students understand the things that we want them to understand? The big one really seems to be it's required. To provide feedback. That's a good one. But as Alegria is saying here, sometimes they've already gotten lots of feedback. So the grade itself is not helping students learn about their learning. It's just kind of there. Okay. And one more question for you guys. What experience do you have with alternative grading? I know we have some people who are using this already. Maybe we have some people who have dabbled, some people who've taken a look at it. Let's kind of see where we're at. Love it, Judy. Okay. Anyone in here still sending your response?
I used to go there to find out, so.
Let me reply to Judy.
All right, so we have some people, Judy, Chris, who else? Who have been, who are, pretty seasoned with alternative grading, and we'll talk a little bit about what this means specifically in a second, because it is kind of a big term with a lot of different possibilities to it. We have some people who have dabbled a little bit with some self-assessment, with some peer review, things like that. And lots of you have not done much, but you are here to learn, which is wonderful. So I'll start with sort of how I got involved in it. I found out about specifications grading, specifically from social media sometime around January 2021. So right in the middle of like the pandemic, figuring out of things. And for me, what I was really interested in was finding a way to reduce the pain of grading for me. Selfish reasons were really my initial motivator. I was drowning, especially with all the, different, trying to accommodate everybody with the pandemic. So I started looking into it because of that. But at the same time, this promise that alternative grading could help with student motivation, could help students know exactly what they should be doing or feel comfortable with kind of knowing what's happening at a time when everything was really uncertain. And I've kept up with it because I've seen some good results, which I will talk about later. But first, let me pull up Rachel so we can hear a little bit about how she got into it. There you are.
So right in the middle of finals week, grading misery, everybody on Twitter in December 2019, everybody was complaining on Twitter about how terrible grading was. And then somebody mentioned something about how wonderful their end of the semester was because they don't grade. And so I, of course, jumped down the rabbit hole and discovered ungrading and alternative grading practices from that and started immediately that following semester. So I've been doing a few different methods. And I'll show you two that I've experimented with, but I already wrote it, but it's with the editors again, working on a book chapter on alternative grading in higher education. Specifically, my chapter is ungrading without burnout, because I'm very concerned about the faculty workload. And many of you expressed that the time-consuming nature of grading was like the worst thing. So that is kind of my big thing, that how to make alternative grading systems work for the faculty as well as the students.
So let's move into a little introduction about the kind of different possibilities in alternative grading. Rachel, I'm gonna try to pull your head up.
Okay. Okay, so this is a chart that probably none of you can see anything in right now, but it is in the resources. And so I kind of did a super brief, super abridged version. So you will be able to see that full one. I just stole it from somebody off Twitter and I have the link to that resource. Later we'll share with you. But this kind of goes over this term ungrading that I've used a few times that is controversial, but I like it as an umbrella term, not only because there is a book that our library has copies of that you can read that uses this word, but also because I think it is just kind of short and easy rather than some long term. But the idea of ungrading is like not grading, but like unlearning is it not learning? But it is seeing that the common grading system has problems and looking at how to address those issues by changing the way that we grade. And it is a spectrum. So there's, from more grade focused to less grade focused. And overall, the point is to kind of focus less on grades and more on learning, but how you do that really can vary. So we're going to be looking at a few different varieties of this: specifications grading, completion-based grading. This is what I'm calling what I'm doing right now, but I think Chris maybe is doing something similar and maybe has a different word for that. But yes, or maybe Judy is probably doing something similar too. But the idea here is also that you aren't just changing the grading system, you have to kind of change a lot of methods in order to do what you're trying to do, make it more learning centered, make it more equitable. You don't want to just jump straight to make everything pass fail without changing everything else if your goal is to help students learn. Okay. Yes.
All right, so specifications grading is what I've been using in my upper division classes for, I don't know, 3 semesters now. I've been tinkering with it along the way. And the basics here, first, you can't see it terribly well, but the like byline on this book, restoring rigor, motivating students, and saving faculty time. Some of that's true, some of it's not. But that could just be the way I'm doing it. It sounds really nice though. So the basics of specifications grading first is pass-fail grading of assignments. All your assignments, or some of your assignments, it's very flexible, are pass-fail. Or if you want to be a little nicer on your students, like mine's met and not yet, something like that. They really don't like the pass-fail wording. In order to make your assignments pass-fail, you have to give your students a lot of information on what you require from these assignments. These are your specifications. So every assignment is going to come with really detailed information on what you're looking for, resources, maybe example papers, things like that. And Linda Nielsen here recommends that your specifications are set for a B-. So in order to pass the assignment, your students need like an 80%. That's not exactly what I did for all of mine, but I'll talk about that. The other thing, if your assignments are going to be pass-fail, your students need opportunities to revise in order to get to that pass. So a couple ways of incorporating flexibility here. Tokens are what I use. So tokens that people can turn in for an assignment revision. Everyone in my class starts with 2, and then they can kind of earn more if they need them. Other options include dropped assignments, drop your lowest fail, drop your fail, I guess, or a combination of the 2. So flexibility in order to help students reach that pass, clear specifications so they know how to get that pass, and then high standards or highish standards, setting it to that B level. So that's the basics really, and you can do specifications like this and assign final grades using points, kind of how a lot of classes typically do. So for that, every assignment would have its point value, the points add up, and maybe it's a percentage or it's out of a certain number of points, whatever. Kind of makes sense for you. The thing that specifications grading is sort of notorious for is bundles. And bundles you can think of as kind of packets of assignments that are tied to specific grades. And I might move us to the next one so you can see it in a little bigger here. And there's not really one like required way to do bundles. Bundles can say, in order to get a higher grade, you need to achieve more course learning outcomes. Or bundles can be the higher your grade, the more complex learning outcomes you demonstrated mastery of. There's no really right way or wrong way, it's kind of up to you. If we look at this, I kind of did a combination of both. Zoom in here. And so you can see here that an A required, well, let's start at the bottom. In order to get a C in the class, students needed a 70% or higher on all exams. This is where I did not go with that recommended 80% level. In order to get a B, they need to meet those requirements, those specifications, plus 2 homework assignments. And for an A, the requirements of a B plus a literature review or a research proposal. So to kind of show you what the rubrics look like, the rubrics should be very detailed. This one I broke down into like every single thing I wanted in this assignment. They also got resources on Blackboard, so the Writing Center, here's how to do APA citations in case you don't know. I don't think they got an example paper with this one. And ideally you grade it as met or not met. And students have to meet all of those in order for their assignment to pass. And then I actually just finished grading one of these and a whole bunch of people skipped one of these and they're gonna have to revise their assignments. Let me talk about the student response to that. Students like some of this, they don't like all of it. They don't particularly like getting to pass or the fail. They don't particularly like having to redo things. They're like, I was 80% of the way there. Well, yeah, but the way it works, you have to do all of it. They don't love it, but the quality of work is so good. It's so good. They really like the token system. They also really like being able to kind of determine their workload in a way. So maybe at the end of the semester, they are feeling a little overwhelmed. They might decide to opt out of that research paper, you know, and they could do this with point systems, right? They could just look at the number of points this assignment is worth and say, oh, hey, my grade will survive if I don't do this. But that's a little more mental energy for them. And so I think they're less likely to do it. When I first did this, it was in an asynchronous online class with bundles and students, or synchronous online, sorry. And some students were very confused by the bundle system, even though I explained it to them over and over and over again. They had a hard time with it and it was really difficult to track in Blackboard, which I think did not help. So at the moment, I'm not using bundles, I'm using a point system because I find that's a little easier for them to understand. I might go back to bundles now that I've had some experience with it. I think I can think of ways of putting them together that are a little less confusing.
Do you think that has to do with the notion that you can have options about what you're required to do? That's a foreign concept to begin with and numbers just, they're used to how many points things are worth?
So I think when I tried it, one of the things that I did was they had to do so many reading guides in order to pass the course, like just kind of, you know, make sure you're reading. And so technically, if you had submitted 8 of 12 bundles and then you stopped and it was 2 weeks before finals week, you're failing the course. Technically, according to the bundle system. And so I think for them, just trying to kind of piece together all the little bits that they had to do was confusing. I will say most of the confusion was in the students who did not attend class fairly regularly. But I mean, I feel like if they can't understand it from looking at the rubric or the announcements or the syllabus or the announcements, like clearly it's something's like it's not being explained well somewhere. So point system is working a little better for me. So pros and cons here. I mentioned this already. Better quality work. Oh my God, they do so good. And even if they don't get it right on the first time, they do amazing the second time. The only thing I've ever had people have to do more than once is like a multiple choice exam. It provides a lot of flexibility for busy students. So, you know, I need to revise this assignment or I had something crazy happen in my life right before this was due. I didn't do so well. Can I do this again? Yes. So the flexibility has been the best part of this. From a psychology perspective, giving people choice in what assignments they're doing, letting them kind of choose their own grade, gives them a little bit more autonomy in the course, gives them some goal setting, should be really good for motivation. That's kind of theoretical, I haven't like measured it. But those are all good things. And another thing that's nice about it is it incorporates kind of best practices that we already know about. So things like transparent assignment design, backwards design from your course learning outcomes to your assessments. All of that is kind of embedded in the system and it helps you set things up in a really nice way. The downsides. I mentioned that the byline there did not uphold its promises. It did not really save me any time. The pre-semester workload was heavy, trying to figure out the bundles, figuring out course learning outcomes that I could measure specifically with my assignments. It all took a lot of work. The significant learning course design summer CTL thing was a big help with that, so I highly recommend that. Figuring out the bundles is tough. It takes a lot of time. Making your assignments, putting together all those resources, making sure your rubrics are good and detailed and helpful. All that takes a lot of time. I guess you could do it during the semester, but that's not how I like to do things. I like to have everything set up before the semester starts so I don't forget something in the middle of the semester. Revisions were also tricky, especially for things like exams that were in person. So trying to schedule those with students, trying to prevent students from trying to retake the exam the very next day. No, you gotta go study, come back in a couple days at least, and then do it. Assignment revisions, of course, add more time to what students are working on. And so being mindful of the amount of assignments and the work required for that is important. And then also every time someone revises an assignment, I have to evaluate it again. So again, it took some time to figure out what is an appropriate amount of assignments given the amount of revisions I can expect to do. And then finally, I already mentioned this, the Blackboard was not great for tracking pass fail. It works totally fine for points based, but pass fail was quite difficult. So Rachel did something I think was kind of similar that she's going to tell you about before self-assessment grading.
So this is not the first ungrading method I did, but the second, but I will talk about it first. So I learned this from Laura Gibbs, who was teaching online since 2002. And so when we all went emergency remote, she put out a huge guide on her blog online about how she teaches. And so I just stole her method because it clearly worked. And so I'm calling this completion-based grading, partly because she calls it that occasionally, but it's important to note that what she taught were only upper division courses, and they're kind of creative writing type courses. You read things, you write things. So I think this method will work for certain types of courses better than others. So what it entails is you have a checklist of requirements, not a full rubric, but just like a checklist. And if you meet those requirements, you get full points. If you miss some, you revise and resubmit, similar to specifications grading. How you get a grade is what she does is she has these quizzes set up in the LMS. It's just true, false. So you have your declaration, you say, I fulfilled all of the requirements, you say true, and Blackboard automatically gives you your points. So the professor isn't going in there and doing anything. The students are really in charge of keeping track of what work they've done, getting their points, getting their grade. And so, she says, when I notice something glaringly obvious is wrong, like they forgot to put an image in there, I'll tell them, oh, hey, can you redo this? But otherwise, she's very hands off. She does give them huge amounts of feedback, right? Feedback on the writing in order for them to kind of build their skills. But she isn't really involved in the grading process much at all because they are submitting these quizzes every week, automatically getting their points. And once they reach the number of points they want for their grade, they can stop submitting things. So it really gives students a ton of agency. And so, for her class, it was, submitting writing that they're doing, creative writing type things, stories, narratives. For my course, this is one of her gradebook declarations. This is one from my course, and it changes depending on the course. But these are things where I can just kind of check off, did they do it all, rather than an elaborate rubric. So students liked this a lot. They were definitely less stressed, and a lot of them told me that this really kind of made them less stressed and made them focus on the learning rather than the grades as much. There was definitely confusion. I had to repeatedly explain a lot, especially students who wanted to submit things late or who were missing components. They were unsure that they could resubmit. So that there was definitely confusion, and I had to re-explain a lot, but overwhelmingly this worked very, very well. This worked very, very well at the beginning of the pandemic. Fall 2020, this worked great. Once the pandemic was progressing and students' lives were falling apart left and right, it got much worse, because it does require them to have the ability to remember to do these quizzes in Blackboard and record what they've done. And so, you know, once the pandemic was ruining their lives, a lot of them were just kind of not keeping up doing that. And so it required me to kind of chase after them much more. And it worked really well in my upper division classes once the pandemic was already progressing. First semester of doing it, it was great for everyone. But as the pandemic progressed, it worked less well. But Laura Gibbs did this for something like 20 years and it worked well for her. So I think depending on circumstances, depending on the kind of class, it would be a really good system because it worked great that first year. And so, yes, I think yes. One con though, is that it is about how much you submit. The more you submit that meets requirements, the higher your grade. So you could have somebody submit 20 things that are mediocre and somebody who submits 10 things that are really great. And the person who submits the great things gets a lower grade. So it is about quantity rather than quality, because that's really kind of up to the student. So there is that. And if you're doing this, be really careful about how much feedback you're going to be doing, how many things you're going to be reading, because that first semester I gave them way too much and I had way too much work on my hands. It worked really well for the students, but not so well for me. And so I made some tweaks in future semesters. Then what I did the first semester of alternative grading, and I'm doing now again, is what I'm calling self-assessment grading. And I'm explaining it to the students that it's similar to what we do, the APR, where we write about what we've done, write about what they've learned, write about their skills, do this a few times a semester, and they propose a grade for themselves. So I am having them do this 3 times a semester. They did it for the first time last week. And so they answered questions. I don't think it's in the next slide. Oh yeah, here it is. This is my self-assessment sheet for one of my courses. So I have them able here to mark off the assignments that they've done, just keep track of it. And then if you scroll way down, you find the self-assessment. And so they do this 3 times in the semester. Tell me all about how things are going and propose a grade for themselves. And so ideally, if I had fewer students, I would meet with them each time that they did this and discuss. For right now, I am responding with just comments on these, but at the end of the semester, we will meet and discuss their grade. So that's how that works. You don't average the grades that they give themselves. It's just the last one that they do informs the grade. And in my case, they're going to meet with me. We're going to discuss their learning and we're going to agree on a grade together. Some people will just let the students choose their grade and don't make any adjustments at all. I, based on my previous experience and just because I'm not that gutsy, am going to have this conversation and kind of make sure that we are on the same page. And I have found, and everyone else who does something similar to this has found, that you often have to raise A- to A's, especially for women. Women in particular will, you know, those students who are perfectionists and do amazing work never give themselves an A. So you often have to bump up the A- to an A. But generally, I find students give themselves exactly the grade that I would give them. And last week, my students did this for the first time, and most of them were pretty spot on. Students love this. Now, sometimes they're anxious because they're used to having that grade in the grade book at all times and can do their calculations and see how they're doing in the course. And this is uneasy for those students. The first time I did this, I did have 1 or 2 students who were anxious about it. This semester, I have had one-on-one meetings with about 60 students. Every single one has been like, oh no, this is great. I'm not worried at all. So I don't know what has changed. If it's just, I happen to have easygoing students, but this semester, none of them are worried at all. They all love it. It really reduces their anxiety level and really allows them to focus on what they're learning. So pros, reading self-assessments is so nice. It is really wonderful to see just how much they've learned and see them talk about their learning. You know, the students who are really quiet in class, you won't know until they say something really brilliant on their self-assessment. And it also gives you a chance to kind of help them because they'll also tell you what they're struggling with that they, you know, often aren't going to be willing to share in class. They will put into their self-assessment, so you can really help them that way. It's really equitable and flexible. This is a system that doesn't punish students for things outside of their control because it really is focused on the learning and the skills. And I had a student tell me last week that my course that she's in is really neurodivergent friendly. She is somebody who gets accommodations through the disability office, and she said she doesn't need them for my class because it's already the way it's already set up. So it is something that really works for all students, no matter kind of what their life situation is. It's definitely learning centered, encourages metacognition, right? They have to talk about their learning, and it definitely gives them agency. I put as a pro and a con that it really requires trust. You really have to build in time to get to know your students, make sure that they trust you, you trust them, because otherwise it just won't work. So I am having all of my lower division court students meet with me one-on-one briefly this semester, which I know if I had bigger courses would be a terrible idea. And I'm spreading it out. You know, I'm not having them all meet with me in the same week. It's just, you know, whenever you are available, come meet with me at some point. I want to see your face and so that we can get to know one another. So building relationships we know is really crucial for student success and student retention, especially first generation students, Black students, and so on. But it does require time. So that's really kind of the thing that you have to budget for with something like this. Yes, I think that's all I need to say about that.
Carla, I think there's some chats.
Yeah, so now we have time for questions, and I totally saw some questions in the chat. I think I see Yvonne, your hand, I'll come back to you in a second. All right. How frequently do you PR campaign with explaining the system to students? When I was doing the bundle system, I did it 4 times a semester. So right around the starfish reports, because in their starfish reports, I was writing these big long explanations like, hey, you chose this grade, which means you have to do these assignments. You've done these ones, so you're on track or you're not on track. So I was doing it around the time that you would expect starfish reports every 4 weeks or so. Rachel, do you have anything to add to that?
So I have a whole video where I explain this, plus it's in the syllabus, and I went on meeting with students one-on-one, requiring them to, I'm going over it. My upper division students almost all have been in class with me in the past, so I don't really need to go over it that much, but the lower division ones, mostly it's that I'm talking about it with them in these one-on-one meetings. So I haven't found that I need to kind of reiterate over and over and over again this semester. With the method I'm using now, with the completion-based grading, I did have to clarify constantly.
So my question is, I like the idea of the quiz in Blackboard for the points and things like that, just because it adds things up for you. But I'm wondering what happens if they just hit true on all of it and then it's not true? Do you like actually like take your time to go back in and verify those things? And if not, you know, and then have them resubmit and things like that. How does that work in terms of your time and organization? Because it seems like it could be really tedious unless there's some kind of check system, like they can't open something unless something else is submitted or something like that. And is Blackboard, you know, equipped to do that sort of thing?
It is. I do a self-assessment on my assignments before they can submit it. So they go through and they checklist. I have all the components. And then after that, it opens the submission link. And Rachel, you can talk about how you do that.
Yeah, I think probably Laura Gibbs is more hands-off, and probably just like, whatever. I don't know. I've never met her. Jonathan Reese knows her. But yes, when I started, it was fine because there were maybe one or two students who weren't answering honestly. But yeah, after a few semesters, it became a giant pain. Because I would see students who would give themselves all these points, and I knew that what they were submitting wasn't meeting those requirements. And Blackboard, I didn't have an easy way to mark in the Blackboard grade book that it needs to be redone. So yes, that was a real pain, and is one of the reasons why I moved on to a different system.
I have an embedded tutor / TA in my 100 level class who is responsible for going through and check in to see. Well, I do a hypothesis every day in that class, basically that social annotation, and who just gives me a check sheet. And so then I can kind of look at what they're saying they have accomplished, and then look at his check sheet and kind of modify things and talk with them. Okay, why do you think you deserve an A for not doing any of the work? Care to explain? So actually, that's my task for this weekend.
Can you guys hear that on Zoom? No one's saying no, so I'm gonna assume you guys, okay, you guys can hear. Some of these rooms, it's so hard to hear through Zoom, so.
This is good.
This is a good one.
Yeah, this one's fancy. Any other questions? Yeah.
I'll preface the comment with, I'm new here, so this didn't happen here. This is my PTSD talking. What about the accountability that we have to administration for grades and for, what, this all sounds great. I'm also though in a fine arts field where some of this doesn't apply as easily to what I do, although a lot of these things I've tried and done when I taught a more academic class, like a music appreciation class. And I've done some of these things before, but I've also been called to task when my pass rate wasn't where it needed to be because I was trying to make sure that learning outcomes were where they should have been. So I'm just interested in the feedback that you all have experienced in your research about we're liable for if they're giving themselves grades, and hopefully we're not so hands-off that we don't know. It sounds like Rachel's found a good balance, but can you talk to that at all?
So since it's just kind of straight grades, so yes, this is for you.
Yeah, so research shows again and again that the common grading system is bad for learning. It encourages cheating. It encourages students to take easy classes. It encourages them to obsess over the grade rather than the learning. So I think a lot of us who try these new things really do see that the quality of the work goes up. So the quality of the work just goes up when students are focusing on learning rather than being extremely stressed out for one thing. We know that stress isn't good for learning. And so for the fear of grade inflation, I have something I can show you. There was a systematic study of this, and I actually peer reviewed this journal article that showed they had the same classes taught by the same person. traditional grading in some and ungrading in others. In this case, she just had them select the grade. She didn't modify the grade at all. This is just students say, this is the grade I think I should have, and that was their course grade. And you can see here that they found that students graded themselves harder than the professor did. Overwhelmingly, people find that you would expect everyone to just give themselves an A. They don't do it. They don't do it. And last week, when my students submitted their self-assessments, they did not all give themselves an A. You know, there were B's, there were C's. Students, it works. I don't know why, but it does. I think it's that the building trust part. I make sure that they trust me, and as in exchange, they want to make sure that I can trust them. And it works.
I actually think that really actually still is an issue for me. In particular, sort of the notion of equity, and I'm intending actually to survey my students at the end of this semester. So because there are students who will give, in my class anyway, there are students who give themselves a good grade. They're getting higher grades than they were when I was grading. I mean, the class as a whole is getting higher grades than they were when I was grading. And so I do have sort of this concern about if somebody leaves the class and says, you know, I got an A, who earned an A, how does that feel? And then somebody else in the class who said, I got an A, who did not do the work, who did not do nearly as much work, nearly as well as the other person who gave themselves an A. And how's it? And part of me is like, who cares? And part of me is concerned about this notion of what feels equitable to the students. So I haven't figured that out yet, but I do find that still to be an issue with the ungraded.
Even.
Yeah. Yeah, about peer evaluation, and I know you've done a lot of this, so, I may not be doing good stuff. I have dreams of peer evaluation, and the simple problem is I don't get every student to submit the assignment when I would want to do the peer evaluation.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what is the system that makes it work if students aren't turning the work in all at the same time. Yes, please.
So I give my students, so in peer review, I tell my students that partial credit for what they're doing, this has evolved given the ungrading, but partial credit for what they're doing, they get for actually doing the peer review. So I'm like, even if you don't have a paper, if you come into the class and do peer review, that's 2.5% of your grade. So you're not prepared, so what? You can still learn something from the process of peer review. And then I also they also get to know, I guess.
Do they pair up with something, so then you have two people reviewing one piece of
I have
work?
at least two students reading the other person's paper, because I think that makes them a little more comfortable in making comments, because they're like, who am I to say your thesis doesn't make sense? But if the other person says, I don't see a thesis anywhere, then they can
I got you. Okay.
work together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So peer reviews work much better for me. I've been decades since I've done peer reviews with two students at least doing the peer review.
Do you role model for them what peer review looks like? Do you demonstrate that? Like,
Sometimes
I'm doing this, here's where I would look for a thesis. And here's my secret decoder ring for, it's on the verge of a thesis, but it's really fuzzy yet. It's dancing all around and they're not there yet, right? I mean, if you're giving kind of.
So I do have a piece of paper. It's not quite a decoder ring, but it's sort of a decoder ring that asks certain questions about the thesis. First of all, is it there? Is it relevant to everything else that's in the paper? Might you look at the end of that paper and find a better thesis because they finally figured out what they wanted to say? And so other sort of specific questions that I'm looking for the thesis. So there is a form that they fill out most of the time I do a peer review. I can send that form around too if you want to see. It'll be different for music, but it'll give you an idea of how I have them
do that.
So I do peer review, usually just with one peer for time's sake, but I do usually kind of walk them through it with an example paper. Like you're gonna look at the rubric, and if we look at this example paper, it says this, and so we need this, this, and that. And for like an AP style research paper, it takes a whole class session. But hopefully everyone is then on the same page as what they're doing, because otherwise, yeah, you get people who will just be like, yeah, it's great, without actually looking at it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would think you could frame it in terms of inter-rater reliability.
Mhm.
Here's how I would assess this, how would you assess it, and let's see how we've got good overlap, you know, and so
Yeah.
they know what to expect and.
I don't do that, but I could. I'll agree.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. This is so awesome. I love it, and now I know there's a name for what I do, completion-based grading. Woo! You know? I wanted to say that from all the years I've been doing this, I think probably you'll agree that this is a journey. You're never gonna have it perfect, and every semester, hopefully, you're gonna try something new. You know, and if peer review didn't work one way one semester, then you try it again the next semester. And some of us have been doing this a really long time, and we're still, you know, tinkering with these things over and over and over again. Now, is it ever going to be perfect? Probably not, but it can always be better than what we're doing. And Jennifer, to what you were saying, I think the administration only cares that we put an A, B, C, or D there. How do we get to that? I think is very much up to us. And whatever we can do to help the students actually learn, be less stressed, and be responsible for their learning is gonna be worth it. Now, are there gonna be cheaters? You bet. And if they can live with themselves, you know, I mean, I don't know, I don't see myself as the police anymore, you know?
I always tell students, if you cheat, I may not catch you, but God willing, you'll burn in hell.
I think I'll put that in my syllabus.
Their eternal salvation is
I'll put
not.
that in my yeah, but I, you know,
This is
you know,
the
I would agree
reality,
with
right?
it, right,
This is
yeah,
the
I mean,
reality. We see
because,
it in every society. Professors do it too,
yeah,
you
and
know,
it's.
so there you go.
It's so different, especially when, for example, with discussions, I teach, in addition, I teach for 4 other colleges online and so forth. And students just, you guys were talking about points and you so nailed it with the online discussions. They just want to get in there. And I literally, a couple of semesters back, I had a student, you know, go to my dean and said, Dr. Butler won't open the discussion. And I explained at the beginning, I said, it's not about just getting points, it's interaction. Do you just want to post to get points? That discussion is closed. We've moved on to the next discussion. If you post it, nobody's going to respond to you. No one is going to see it. So it defeats the purpose. And my dean knew that was my philosophy. But in backing with Jen, it's not the philosophy of a lot of places. It's like, well, just let them post so they get the points. I don't agree with that. But you're right, you can get your hand slapped. So hopefully you've got a chair or dean that will back you. And fortunately, I've had that. And I said, this is not just about points. It's dialoguing, it's interaction, it's discussion. So you've had 8 days to post to that discussion, answer my questions, respond to 2 or more classmates with not just, oh yeah, I agree with what Karen said. And you get that. I go, and I'll go back in and say, really, tell me why you agree with what Karen said. And so they get upset. And then they go to the powers that be and said, you know, she's like not being fair. Wow, really? Seriously?
She's trying to make us think.
Imagine that.
And that's really like the point.
Yeah,
of
that's-
kind of methods, is to try to
right.
shift them away from like the.
Points, points.
Paleo-
I need my points for the discussion. Don't you get it?
Yeah.
I should just say one more thing, that for me, actually, I know my student learning outcomes much better since I've been doing ungrading, like really, than I did when I was doing grading. And my students know, and actually now, I just started started last semester, but more strictly this semester, I told the students they have to tell me which student learning outcomes they're working on. So they also are aware of the student learning outcomes. So that's part of the syllabus is you have to fill this part out. What are you doing? And which of the ones, you still have to like pay attention to these gen ed requirements and history requirements and so on. But what is it that you're gonna focus on among these, or what other ones can you think of that you could be learning? And so that sort of active learning that you two are both talking about too it's a totally different thing. And it's just way better. And it's not perfect. Like other people would say.
This is great.
Thank you very much. I think when we get out of that tug of war with our students.
Yeah.
How much, and you let go, and how are we on the same side of the
Yeah.
learning together?
Yes.
Right.
And investment in our learning and not power
Yeah.
struggle over points and policing. It changes, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
And that does develop that trust. And it does let them calm down and get a little more excited about learning. Hooray for that, because who doesn't love excited students? Learn. It's like, hey. Thank you both very much. Thank you. Thank you, Carla. We'll see you hopefully next month.
Next
We have
month.
Our next presenters, Rufina and Michael. I don't know if I can see her virtually. And Jim, thank you.
We will be talking about plagiarism.